Hey folks, this is Michael Knapp. Today we're going to discuss the effectiveness of masks. Now, if masks are effective, why are they not mandated? And if they're not effective, why are we wearing them? Now, all of us have had some type of experience with this mask movement that has hit our globe. You've met someone that it's either a mask warrior who wears the mask daily, and sometimes you wonder if they may even wear them to bed at night, where others are mask warriors on the other side who refuse to wear a mask no matter what the situation is. So the question is, do masks work? Now, if they work, why are they not mandated? And if they don't, why are people wearing them? So we're going to look at this closely today, and we're going to discuss some pretty obvious things. Okay, are we ready to dig in? First, many of you have heard what people will say, well, it's factual that masks work, or the science says, and they give you some bit of information that they found on a website from a scientific institution that gives you logical or detailed information that masks do work, or maybe have some that say they do not work. So the question is, my first question is, who is funding these organizations? That's a huge question. Let me give you an example. I went to Indiana University and the University of Louisville, and let's say Pfizer, who came out with this most recent COVID vaccine, came to Indiana University and said, we're going to give you $5 million to conduct COVID-19 research. Let me ask you a very poignant question. How do you think that research is going to turn out? Do you think it's going to turn out in favor for Pfizer's vaccine or against Pfizer's vaccine? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you it's obviously going to come out in favor for Pfizer. Why? Because they're funding that research. Now, let's look at another key point. Who is conducting that research? Now, if you've spent any time in the university settings, you will know that most folks that work in a biological lab or a chemistry lab or something like that, or any position in a university, most of these universities are very liberal institutions. It's getting progressively more difficult to find a conservative in any of these atmospheres. So that's number two, who's conducting that study. Now, here's another very important piece, and I want us to really listen to this next piece of information, because it's very simple, but it's very profound. Now, let me ask you this question. What is the difference between wisdom and knowledge? I'm just going to read this. Knowledge is the accumulation of facts and data you've learned about or experienced. It's being aware of something and having information. Knowledge is really about facts and ideas that we acquire through study, research, investigation, observation, and experience. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever met a college student that comes out of a college atmosphere and is all on fire because they spent 4 years or 6 years or 8 years in a university setting, and their mind is filled with all these facts, all this data? That, my friends, is knowledge. So then what is wisdom? The wisdom is the ability to discern and judge which aspects of that knowledge is actually true, right, lasting, or maybe applicable for your life. It's the ability to apply that knowledge to the greater scheme of life. It also goes deeper. It's knowing the meaning or reason about knowing why something is, etc. So, now, one thing to notice about knowledge and wisdom is wisdom can also determine if knowledge is a lie. Let me give you a really interesting example. Many of you have heard of it. There's a story in the Bible of King Solomon. King Solomon was supposedly one of the wisest men in the world, not just then, but even known to be one of the wisest men in all ages. So these two women come to Solomon, and both of them claim this child is theirs. Now, Solomon doesn't have a lot of knowledge to go by other than this woman claims the child is hers and this woman does the same. He has maybe a few other pieces of information. He knows that a typical mother, if it's their child, is going to be very passionate and very sympathetic and very caring and very loving towards their child, where another mother may not have that same empathy or sympathy, etc. So Solomon pulls these ladies together and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut the child in half, and we're going to give half of that child to one parent or one mother and the other half to the other. He used wisdom. He used the knowledge that he had, along with this knowledge about this mother loving this child, and came up with a very wise solution. The solution was to cut the child in half. Why? Because he knew the real mother of that child would not let that happen. Okay, that, folks, is an example of wisdom. He had little knowledge about the situation, but he was able to use other pieces of knowledge and create a wise solution. So here's our problem. We have a ton of knowledge about masks. You can go on the internet, anywhere on the internet, and pull off boatloads of knowledge that came from these science institutions that are obviously funded by some organization and are led by some individual that likely has some type of bias. So the question is, then what we have to do is we have to take knowledge and stick it into the puzzle. For example, recently I heard watched a pretty interesting video from Phil Nye the Science Guy. Now, Phil Nye the Science Guy in this video shows how when moisture comes into a mask, the filaments or fibers in this mask capture that moisture that contains the bacteria. That bacteria is then locked into the mask so it doesn't come through into the mouth or sinus passages or whatever. Therefore, quote unquote, preventing the bacteria from getting in the body. So that's one piece of information that is considered, quote unquote, fact. Now, you've also heard another very interesting piece of information. You will hear, this is what I hear more often than not, well, doctors and nurses, they always wear masks or frequently wear masks in an operating room or a hospital room or whatever. Now, that's also true. That is what I would consider a fact. People do that. Well, what you're not understanding is that the environments for which these doctors and nurses operate. Let me explain. If you're a plastics company or a metal company or a fabric company or whatever the case may be, and you want to sell to a hospital environment, if you want to sell a product or manufacture a product to the hospitals, whether it's a hospital room, an emergency room, in particular, a surgical room, you have to go through this. Your product has to be produced in what is called these clean room environments. And let me read this. Medical device manufacturing is conducted in an ISO 5.8 clean room class 100 to 100,000 environment, we'll call it. Medical device packaging is conducted in an ISO class 7 to 8 clean room. Basically what these clean rooms are, let me give you an example. If I owned a plastics company and I wanted to sell to the hospital industry, I have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to create these atmospheres that are free from bacteria, free from particles, free from all these things before I can even produce a plastic part to get into these environments. Most people, most plastics companies, metal companies, fabric companies, whatever, don't want to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars required to put a product into those atmospheres. So that's the first thing to understand. A medical atmosphere is a light years different atmosphere than the typical environment that most of us operate in, okay? Second, when a doctor wears a mask, he typically wears it once or for short increments of time. He doesn't walk around the operating room and touch the patient 100 times and touch his nose and touch a cabinet and touch his nose and touch a door and touch his, and adjust his mask. No, if he touches his mask, he takes it off and throws it away and gets another mask. Matter of fact, before he even puts it on, he heavily sanitizes his hands before he puts that mask back on. Now, the idea is that masks worn in these environments are not remotely, folks, the same as the environments for which we operate in. Not even close. So let's use wisdom. Wisdom knows that our environments that the typical person operates in are not clean room environments. Not only are they not clean room environments, they're not remotely sanitized. They don't remotely resemble a hospital clean room environment. When a person walks into the store, they touch the handle on the door to walk in. When they walk through the store, they touch boxes and shelves and items, random items all throughout the store. And then when they go to check out, they take their stuff to the checkout, and typically there's a conveyor belt or something like that, and they touch that 4 or 5 times, and then they put their credit card in and touch whatever they need to touch to run their credit card through the machine. So, and maybe in that process they sneezed on their hand or coughed or blew their nose, or maybe they went to the bathroom and touched the handle at the bathroom or a faucet in the bathroom, transmitting all these bacteria all over the atmosphere that you're in. Now, what I'm going to do for purposes of illustration, most of us know that we cannot see bacteria from the naked eye, by the naked eye. It's just, I can't look at my shirt or my hands and see bacteria on my hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a visual representation of the environments that we operate in, and then you tell me, and feel free to comment on the comments below, also subscribe to our channel, and you tell me if you think, just based on this wisdom that I'm going to show you, if these masks work or if they do not work. Now, Phil Nye the Science Guy says that what happens is when we wear these masks, the bacteria gets captured into this mask. And guess what, guys? That's fact. But let me show you how this actually plays out. So what I have here a mask, and I'm probably not going to put it on. I'll just press it against my face. So I've got some sidewalk chalk. Okay, this sidewalk chalk, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this color that's on this sidewalk chalk represent the typical things that you may touch in a store that has a light amount of bacteria on it. Maybe it's not touched a lot, but it's touched frequently. And then what I have here is some watercolor paints. These watercolor paints are going to represent things that you may touch in a store, like faucets, door handles, the cashier thing at the checkout, things that you would touch frequently, things that are touched literally 100, 200, 300, 5,000 times a day. No telling how many times some of these things are touched. So you're walking through the store and you're touching random items. Now, what I'm going to do, you're supposed to have the blue side out, but for purpose of the illustration, I want you to see what I'm doing. So this is the white side. So let's say this is what I'm wearing, and I touch this sidewalk chalk, which represents random things in the store. And then I lightly adjust my mask. Now, you can't see it, but already there's a little bit of blue on this mask. Now, let me do it again. I'll rub a couple more. So I touch another item and rub it again. And you probably can't see it really closely, but as you see, there's a few, there's some evidence of some blue markings on this mask. These are the things. So I have just transferred, if I've touched my face or my mask, I've just transferred this bacteria to my mask. Now it's on my mask. Okay, so far it has not gotten through to the other side. But let's say I touch something a little bit more aggressive, like a door handle or a faucet in a bathroom or the checkout thing at the register. We'll represent that with some watercolor paint. So I adjust my mask a little bit, and as you see, the more I do this and the more I touch my mask, and if you've ever been to a store, you can see that most people touch their mask probably 20, maybe 30 times a day, maybe more. Now, what do you see? You see bacteria on this mask, do you not? Well, what's interesting so far, you can see a little, and it's a little hard to see on this side, a little of that colorant coming through the mask, okay? Yes, the mask is capturing this bacteria. Here's the problem. Most people take this mask off during the day and they put it in their pocket. They take it back out again and put it on their face. And when they do that, they're touching typically both sides of the mask. I have watched people countless times during the Christmas season coming in and out of stores pulling this mask on and off, touching both sides of the mask. Matter of fact, I was in a retail store and purposely asked for a mask. Now, let me tell you this. The person was working at the cash register. Now, I asked, can I have a mask? Just to see if I can get one for free for this illustration. She reached into the box with her hand that touched cash, change, people's items that they've touched multiple times, and grabbed my mask and handed it to me. Now that bacteria is not only on this side of the mask, it's on that side of the mask. Folks, if you're reaching into your pocket and you're pushing this in your pocket and you're pulling it out and you're putting it on your face, now all those things that you've touched, those handles, those faucets, the cash register things are now stuck to your lips and in your mouth, and there's moisture coming out of your mouth, keeping that bacteria alive. Don't tell me for a second that these masks in that environment are preventing COVID-19 from entering your mouth. Now, here's what's crazy. I could continue to do this over and over again, and I have another illustration. I used another mask to just give you an idea. If you're touching things over and over throughout the day, 30, 40, 50 times a day, sticking in your pocket, taking it out, touching the steering wheel in your car, and then reaching up and grabbing it and putting it back on. If you're doing that, you're not only preventing yourself from getting COVID-19, you're actually increasing your risk. And let me share this with you. The Center for Disease Control says that 71 to 74% of people who were diagnosed with COVID, that got COVID, diagnosed with COVID-19, reported 71 to 74% that they always wore a mask. Another 11, and I think I even heard up to 14% of people, that same group of people, said they frequently wore masks. Now, what was alarming, and I don't have the statistic, is that it was only around 3% of people that got COVID-19 said they never wore a mask. So guys, based on that information, 71 to 74% of people that said that got COVID-19 said they always wore a mask. So folks, that number alone tells you that either, number one, masks don't work, or number two, people are not using these masks correctly. You have people in stores that are freaking out because you don't have a mask on, but those same people are taking their mask off and on 10, 20, 30, 40 times a day, sticking it in their pocket, hanging it on their rear view mirror, sticking it on their face again. Now, there are a handful of people in our world right now that are using the mask correctly. How do you use a mask correctly? You heavily sanitize your hands and you put the mask on your face. Then when it's done and you've walked out you throw it in a trash can and put it away. Now, there's other things that I think we need to understand about heavily using bacteria wipes. We have, most of you understand this, we have an innate immune system, one we're born with, and an adaptive immune system, one that develops over time. And what happens is the innate system and the adaptive immune system work together in time to help build our immune system. And if we are one of those people that put antibacterial hand sanitizers on our hands, we sanitize everything in the world, then what's going to happen is our system has not created an immune system that if we get COVID-19 can fight it. So does it really make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy going crazy doing this correctly when the likelihood of when you finally get it, you're going to be in worse shape than had you not done it in the first place and just built your own immune system? Now, there are people, let me share this. There are people that do not have good immune systems. My suggestion is they shouldn't be out in public, but if they have to get out, then they need to do whatever they can to live their lives as if they were working in a hospital type environment where they follow the same rules, regulations, and procedures a doctor or a nurse would if they're going to use one of these. So let me let me share with you some experiences that I've had just recently of people out in our environment wearing masks and the insanity of this behavior. Recently, I walked into Walmart. It was before the Christmas season, and there was a gentleman there that had a box of masks, and he sticks this box. He sees that I'm not wearing a mask, and he puts this box of mask in front of me, and it's within where moisture from my mouth would have easily fallen into this box. I watched. There was probably 5-10 people within a minute or two after me that walked by him, and he did the same thing. He put it within probably 2 feet of me breathing into this box. So let's say 100 people passed by this guy who is doing this. Well, guess what? That's 100 people that have breathed into that box. Then there's probably, I don't know how many masks are in the box, but let's say there's 50 or 100. That's 50 or 100 people that maybe reached into that box and grabbed a mask. So now all the bacteria that's come through from that 100 or 200 people that have breathed into that box, plus the 50 to 100 people that have touched that box, is now on these of mask that you want me to put on my mouth? Are you kidding me? This is if you believe Corona is going to take your life, this is a great way to take your life. It's almost like Corona suicide, okay? But yet there are people that buy it. They say, okay, it's the same way when I went into the grocery store the other day and the lady was handling all the cash, didn't put gloves on, didn't sanitize her hands, and reached in and grabbed that box and gave it to me. Do you think that mask I want to put on my face? No way. Another great example, I was at Wendy's the other day, and it was before Christmas, and it was packed. There was probably 45 to 50 people, which I haven't seen that many people in Wendy's in years. And there was a lady in front of me that had 2 or 3 children, and she was walking. There was probably 20 people in line, and there's a rail there. There's another shelf type area where you come in, and she was touching all that as she was walking through the line. And then as she got to the front, her kids were standing there, and she took the mask, her hands, both hands, and squished the mask really tight on her kids' hands to make sure the mask was working. So now all that bacteria that she touched all over the store, coming into the store, wherever, is now transferred onto her child's mask. This is the insanity that we're dealing with, folks. Now here's the deal. Wisdom says you are preventing this. Wisdom says mask work, okay? Knowledge says mask work. Knowledge says bacteria gets trapped into these fibers. Wisdom says there's an appropriate time, place, and environment to use them, or a way in which we use them that will work. So the idea is, guys, I think we've lost our minds. We have lost our collective minds. We are wearing these masks, assuming we have some type of heavy protection. I'm gonna say this, and this is, and I probably should have some information that I link up to. About 20 years ago, I acquired a building that I was going to renovate, and it had asbestos all over the building. And I was told that I had to spend $25,000, or approximately $25,000, to get this asbestos out of the building. Well, I knew the owner of the asbestos removal company. It was an environmental company. And I called the gentleman and I said, hey, what should I do? They said, man, I can't do this. I can't spend $25,000 to remove the asbestos. And he kind of giggled. He said, Michael, do not tell anybody I told you this. Now, I'm not going to tell you the name of the company. He said, just get it out of there. Just remove it. Throw it, put it in a black trash bag and throw it away. And I said, well, what do I need to do? He said, really nothing. And there are all kinds of it. Now, he's been doing this for 25, 30 years, and he's a multi-million-dollar company. And he has to follow all these governmental rules and regulations. And he has scientists, and he has biologists, and he has all these people on his payroll. And they will tell you, ultimately, even these people that wear hazmat suits, and this is what these guys do. He said most of these masks are worthless. Matter of fact, I posted a comment about masks on my Facebook today, and his son, who was also in the industry, told me very clearly, and he's been in the industry his entire life, that these masks really do not do the job we think they're going to do. They really don't capture the bacteria that we think they're going to capture. And if they do, we're just keeping the bacteria on our faces, making it actually worse instead of better. That's why CDC numbers say 71 to 74% of people who got COVID said they wore the mask all the time, and 11% said they wore the mask regularly. Folks, there's no question, I believe, that there's some agenda behind this. If you've watched any of my videos, you know there's a lot of political maneuverings that would have you believe the media has sold this agenda to you. All they've done, here's what they've done. They've given you knowledge. But what they haven't told you is where that knowledge is coming from. Who's funding that knowledge? Who's doing the research to give you that knowledge? And second, what they're not doing is they're not giving you any wisdom to take that knowledge and do anything with it. So folks, stop buying the agenda. Take the mask off and live your life. This thing is not likely going to save you. Folks, feel free to comment in the comment section. You can also subscribe to the video, and more information will be up soon. I've done a couple other videos. I did another video on the statistics of COVID-19. Most people are deathly afraid of a virus that has very little impact on the younger generation. If you go, you can see it on one of our videos that we've posted recently. I also have some political post on there I think I want to encourage you to watch. My challenge is for you to take this information, share it with as many people as you possibly can. People, yes, they need facts. Yes, they need knowledge, but they also need wisdom. Folks, that's not what we're doing. We are walking around like a bunch of blind sheep, not taking the time to research this and think through this information. So thanks for watching this video. Feel free again to subscribe and make a comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and God bless.